If your thumb stopped here, it wasn't chance. It was resonance. Something in you felt the quiet pull before your mind could explain it, as if a future version of you leaned across time and whispered, "Pay attention." Breathe with me for a moment. Inhale slowly and notice the slight coolness of the air. Exhale and feel the warmth return. In that brief stillness between breath in and breath out, reality waits for instruction. That pause is not empty. It is the control room of your life. And today, inside that pause, we are going to install a different operating system, one that uses two words to turn possibility into fact. I am. You've tried to force change before. You've stood in front of mirrors, jaw tight, repeating phrases that felt hopeful but hollow. I am wealthy. I am loved. I am healed. You said the words, but your body flinched, your chest tightened, your nervous system muttered, "Lies." That pain you feel, the sting of saying one thing while believing another, is not failure. It's feedback. No one gave you the manual for the most potent creative instrument in the universe. You were handed a nuclear engine without the schematics. So of course the effort felt like strain. Of course the results came in fragments. This isn't about trying harder. It's about learning how reality actually responds to you. At the smallest scale we can measure, existence behaves like a field of pure potential until an observer focuses. Observation collapses the maybes into a single is. That's not poetry. That's physics. It is also the missing link in your personal transformation. The phrase, "I am," is not a slogan. It is a collapse command. It tells the field, "Of all the waves I could surf, give me this one now." But here's the part almost everyone misses. The field doesn't react to words, it reacts to coherence. If your mouth says, "I am abundant," while your muscles vibrate, "I am afraid," the signal scrambles, the order cancels, and life mirrors the static. The cure for that dissonance is not more volume. It is alignment. When your breath, posture, emotion, and intention agree, "I am" stops being an affirmation and becomes an authorization. The universe doesn't debate. It complies. Imagine the world not as a marketplace where you hustle for what you want, but as a kitchen that waits for your recipe. Most people sit in the dining room, wishing for a better dish, critiquing what lands on their plate, comparing their order to the table next to them. They don't realize the door to the kitchen is unlocked. I am is the moment you step through that door, roll up your sleeves, and choose the menu by becoming the flavor. You don't beg for abundance. You breathe as abundance. You don't chase love. You open as love. You don't bargain for peace. You embody peace. Your state cooks the world you taste tomorrow. Right now, you may be in the friction between who you were and who you're becoming. Routines that once soothed now feel too small. Old identities itch like a sweater a size too tight. That discomfort is not punishment, it's proof. It is the sound of an outdated pattern losing its grip. It is the flywheel of the past meeting a new torque. When you learn to hold steady inside that hum, when you refuse to flinch back into the familiar, your I am slices cleanly through the static, and the field begins to rearrange with almost suspicious precision. The calls shift. The timing sharpens. The opportunities that fit your former frequency stop returning your texts, and the ones that match your new broadcast appear without chasing. To the untrained eye, it looks like luck. To you, it's just physics finally given a clear instruction. Let's be plain about the pain. You're tired of trying to think your way into a life you can't seem to feel. You're tired of effort that leaves you tense, of strategies that promise power while keeping you dependent. You're tired of praying for change and then checking your phone to see if the miracle has DM'd you back. The solution is not out there. It's here, in the tone of your body, in the rhythm of your breath, in the sentence your heart speaks before any words leave your tongue. When your inner sentence changes from "I hope" to "I am," doors that didn't even exist on yesterday's floor plan begin to appear. You don't force them open. You arrive. and they recognize you. Over the next few chapters, I will give you a precise, evidence-aligned protocol to deploy the I am command without the self-sabotage that usually follows. No mystical detours, no performance spirituality, just a clear, repeatable way to turn state into structure. So the peace you generate at 6 a.m. becomes the email that lands at 2 p.m., the conversation that softens at 5, the sleep that restores at midnight. You won't need to plead with the future. You'll learn to authorize it. Before we go, take ownership of this moment. If this message resonates in your bones, subscribe now so you don't miss the next transmission. We're building a practice, not a one-off inspiration. And stamp your intention in the field with a simple signal. Type 111 in the comments. In this space, 111 is not just a number. It's our alignment code. A clean declaration that says, I am ready, I am present, I am aligned. Let it be your first micro-command, a small but sovereign act that tells the universe you have stepped from wishing to choosing. Now breathe again. Feel your shoulders drop. Sense the quiet widen behind your sternum. The kitchen light just flicked on. From here forward, your life is not a hunt. It is a menu, and the chef has arrived. Before we speak of power, we must speak of precision. At the heart of reality, there is a behavior so odd, it rewrote everything we thought we knew about matter. When unobserved, the smallest constituents of the world behave like a shimmering cloud of maybes. When observed, they choose. That is the essence you need to feel in your bones. Possibility is the natural state of the universe. Selection is the human privilege. The phrase, I am, is the moment of selection, not a slogan you repeat to feel better, but the inner click by which your awareness instructs the field to stop being wave and start being world. If you have ever wondered why change teases you, near enough to touch, far enough to slip, this is the reason. You were speaking in words while your body was broadcasting a different station. Reality did not fail you. Your signal was divided. Think of your attention as a lens, not a flashlight. A flashlight throws light outward. A lens brings light into focus. The field is always luminous. It doesn't need you to brighten it. It needs you to focus it. When you press your awareness into a chosen identity, calm, capable, cherished, everything outside reorganizes to match the clarity you hold inside. This is not a motivational trick. It is the quiet mechanics of coherence. And coherence begins in the flesh. Your nervous system is the metronome. If your breath is thin and hurried, your command stutters. If your posture collapses around your heart, your message arrives garbled. But when your breathing lengthens and your chest opens as if to say, yes, without words, your state and your sentence become one act. That is when I am stops bouncing off the surface of life and begins to bend it. You have felt this alignment before in flashes so natural you almost missed them. The moment you softened into certainty about a decision and, as if on cue, the right person called. The evening you released a clenched question and woke to a solution that felt inevitable. Those were not accidents. They were demonstrations. For a few minutes, your emotion, thought, and action stopped arguing. Your field smoothed. The world answered. The lesson is not that you must wrestle life into compliance, but that you must become a sentence it can read without squinting. The body learns this language faster than the mind, which is why we begin not by chanting, I am, through gritted teeth, but by altering rhythm. Inhale as if drawing in permission, exhale as if releasing the old contract. Stand as if stability were a posture and not a promise. Look out at the room as if you already belong to the future you are naming. In that physiological agreement, the declaration lands. Doubt will try to negotiate. It will point to bank balances, text threads, and unfinished chapters as evidence that nothing has changed. Let it speak, and notice what follows. A tightening in the throat, a shallow breath, a shoulder rising toward the ear. Do not argue with the story. Change the physiology. Widen the breath by a single count. Let the shoulder fall. Place 2 fingers lightly on the sternum and feel the pulse that has been faithful since before you had a name. Now say it, not loudly, not often, but cleanly, from within the body that has shifted. I am. You will feel the difference the way a musician feels when an instrument comes into tune. The room is the same. The note is new. From here, the world will not explode into fireworks. It will whisper back. A small yes where there used to be friction. A conversation that moves one step further than it ever has. A sense of timing that saves you from forcing. Respect these calibrations. They are the first confirmations that your command has been received. The great mistake is to dismiss them because they look ordinary. The extraordinary almost always enters dressed as the everyday. Only a coherent observer recognizes it upon arrival. Train your eye for subtle evidence, not to chase proof, but to participate in momentum. When you see even a hair's breadth of alignment, breathe into it and let the body memorize the feeling. Memory is not only mental, it is muscular. Teach your muscles the geometry of your new identity, and they will hold it when the mind forgets. What about the surges of resistance that crash in after you've made a clear inner move? The sudden fatigue, the restless urge to sabotage, the urge to pick a familiar fight. Do not pathologize these currents. They are the inertia of the old orbit, the last winds of a weather pattern you no longer live beneath. Meet them with the same physics you used to create your command. Presence first, then posture, then language. Presence. Feel the exact place the discomfort lives in the body, as if you were laying a gentle hand on a frightened animal. Posture. Organize your frame around the state you chose. Soft belly, wide back, crown floating. Language. One clean sentence that belongs to the new frequency. Not a paragraph, not a performance. One line. I am. Hold it until the storm inside you remembers that the season has changed. If you hunger for speed, here is the paradox you must embrace. Reality moves as quickly as your nervous system allows. Aggression slows it. Trust accelerates it. The field is perfectly ready to respond in an instant, but it will not deliver to a system that cannot hold. That is not punishment. It is intelligence. So rather than asking, how do I make this happen faster? Ask, how do I become steadier while it happens? In practice, that sounds like this. Choose a state, breathe it into tissue, seal it with I am, and then walk into your day, letting small actions confirm what you've declared. Answer the email from the posture of the one who is already chosen. Spend the dollar with the care of the one who is already abundant. Offer the apology with the heart of the one who is already free. These are not theatrics. They are the simplest way to keep the lens clean. By the end of this chapter, let a quiet certainty settle where questions used to whirl. You are not here to wrestle the universe into generosity. You are here to remember how responsive it has always been to a coherent command. The 2 words you carry are not a wand. They are a key. Use them with the steadiness of someone who has finally learned where the lock is. Inhale permission. Exhale the past. Speak from the body you have aligned. And let the field do what it has always done for the few who choose to become clear. Obey. If the words I am are the moment of selection, then who is doing the selecting? This is where your identity quietly decides everything. Most of us approach creation like anxious patrons in a crowded restaurant, waving at a distracted waiter, reciting long orders we barely believe we deserve. We point at pictures on the menu of life and hope the kitchen gets it right. But the day you understand that the kitchen is yours, that the quantum field is not somewhere else, not later, not above you, but the living pantry of your own consciousness, your tone changes. You stop begging outcomes to arrive and begin composing them from the inside out. You stop trying to attract what you don't feel you are and begin selecting from the truth you have chosen to occupy. The shift sounds subtle. It is seismic. Patrons ask. Chefs decide. Identity is not a label. It is an atmosphere. Walk into any room holding the inner weather of "I am chosen," and notice how conversations bend toward ease. Walk into the same room broadcasting "I am unseen," and watch how even friendly eyes glance away. The world is not arguing with you. It is harmonizing with you. This is why affirmations spoken from tension fall flat. You can say, "I am abundant," through a locked jaw, but the field hears the clench, not the sentence. When you assume the chef's station, you change the recipe first, not the plating. You season your breath with steadiness. You lift your posture as if certainty had a spine. You let the face soften as if safety were a temperature. Then, and only then, the declaration becomes edible to the universe. It tastes coherent. It reads as fact. To live as the chef is to replace performance with presence. There is no need to announce, to convince, to sprinkle glitter on doubt. You choose a state and behave as if it were the only reasonable option, not with bravado, but with quiet inevitability. The old self will try to bargain. It will bring invoices from the past and ask you to explain your new prosperity. It will present photographs of heartbreak and ask you to justify your new openness. It will point to delays and dare you to abandon your composure. Let it speak. Then let the body answer by remaining what it just became. Every time you stay in character, calm in a familiar storm, generous in a space that once made you grasp, clear where you would have apologized for existing, you are telling the kitchen which dish is being served. The Vicar staff gets faster every day. You don't change the order. Your environment will begin to reorganize with a precision that feels almost theatrical. A project that never fit will quietly release its grip. A conversation that used to knot your stomach will start flowing like water around a stone you no longer are. People who need you to be small to stay comfortable will either soften toward your steadiness or drift like mist in morning light. None of this requires confrontation. It requires consistency. When the chef stops cooking the old dish, the dining room stops pretending to enjoy it. The friction you use to read as rejection is often just resonance recalibrating. The frequency you hold becomes the policy of the house, and life, being exquisitely obedient, adjusts its reservations accordingly. Do not confuse this composure with denial. The chef doesn't ignore spoiled ingredients. The chef replaces them. If a bill arrives while you are stabilizing abundance, pay what honors integrity and refuse the old story that money is a verdict. If a symptom flickers while you are stabilizing health, tend to the body and refuse the old accusation that you are fragile. If a memory surges while you are stabilizing love, breathe with the younger self inside it and refuse the old conclusion that closeness is unsafe. Refusal here is not resistance. It is authorship. You are not arguing with facts. You are updating the context that gives facts their meaning. Inside the right context, the same circumstance becomes either proof that you should shrink or proof that you are growing. The chef decides which kitchen rule applies. There will be days when the old kitchen tries to reopen. You will feel the tug to gossip, to hurry, to earn your worth by performing an older version of competence. 5 minutes of conscious rehearsal is enough to prevent a relapse into that noise. Close your eyes. Inhale as if drawing breath from the future. Place a palm on your chest. And remember the sensation of the state you have chosen. Not its slogan, its weight, its temperature, its rhythm. Now open your eyes and move 1 inch slower than your anxiety prefers. Send one message from your new tone. Drink 1 glass of water as if abundance were hydrating your cells. Speak 1 line of truth where you once would have decorated it. These are not small gestures. They are the daily plating of your identity. The field reads them as policy, not poetry. Each time you slip, notice how quickly the universe mirrors the slip and how quickly it mirrors the return. That responsiveness is your reassurance. You are not waiting months to see if you're allowed to change. You are witnessing feedback in hours, often minutes. A door swings because you stopped touching the handle with desperation. A person softens because your nervous system stopped shouting for proof. An idea lands because you made space for a sentence that wasn't trying to impress anyone. This is the art of being a source. You are no longer squeezing outcomes through the narrow straw of effort. You are allowing them to condense around a field that finally holds. And when the mind asks, "How long must I keep this up?" smile at the trick inside the question. Chefs do not keep up a performance. They keep a kitchen. This is not a sprint toward a prize. This is a home you tend so well that it begins to run on a hum you trust. Let that hum replace urgency. Let it guide your hands, your calendar, your replies. Let it decide which invitations you accept and which you decline without apology. The more you honor that subtle guidance, the louder it becomes, until the next right action feels less like a guess and more like muscle memory. At that point, "I am" is not something you say. It is what your presence says before you speak. In this way, identity ceases to be a mask and becomes a current. You are not acting as abundant. You are circulating. You are not acting as loved. You are radiating. You are not acting as peaceful. You are toning the room. Every meeting becomes a proof. Every morning an installment. Every night a settling of the day's ledger in favor of the self you have finally allowed. This is not magic. It is housekeeping at the level of reality. And you, now seated where you've always belonged, are running the kitchen with the kind of calm that makes stars invisible at noon. They are still there, but the light you've chosen to be has become the sky. Imagine reality as a shimmering veil that looks solid only because you are standing still. Take one step inward, into breath, into awareness, into the tone beneath your thoughts, and the veil loosens. You begin to sense that events do not line up like dominoes pushed by fate. They crystallize around a signal. That signal is not your wishes, not your chatter, not even your clever plans. It is your state. When you declare "I am" from a body that already carries the feeling you name, your declaration is not a hopeful sentence. It is an act of measurement. In the silent arithmetic of the universe, measurement ends the murmur of maybe. It forces the field to choose. Where there were 1,000 versions of you, hesitant you, radiant you, scattered you, sovereign you, one version gains authority, and the world begins to conspire to make that version ordinary. Do not rush past this with a nod, as if it were a pretty metaphor. Linger in it the way you linger in a gallery before the one painting that sees you back. The observer effect is not a myth whispered by mystics to comfort the weary. It is the most practical invitation you will ever receive. Select your atmosphere, and reality will match its weather. If you have ever walked into a room already braced for conflict, you know how quickly a harmless comment becomes a spark. If you have ever arrived carrying the ease of someone who does not need to win, you have also seen sharp edges dissolve into conversation. Nothing outside actually changed first. Your gaze did. Your breath did. Your nervous system stopped grabbing, and the space around you lost its reason to be hostile. That is collapse in motion. The wave of what could be condenses into the particle of what is, and the instrument that conducts the condensation is the way you are being. There is a reason old efforts have exhausted you. Effort tries to bully the field with volume. Alignment wins with tuning. You can throw 1,000 thoughts at a situation and move nothing but your heartbeat. Or you can change the temperature of your interior by 2 degrees and watch doors swing because the room prefers your climate. This is why rehearsed positivity tastes thin and leaves you hungry. Words that contradict your body do not command. They plead. But when the sentence rises from tissue that already feels the thing named, the field has no conflicting input to parse. There is only one coherent instruction, and reality obeys the clarity the way a flock obeys the turn of its leader. Your job is not to shout better. Your job is to become quieter than the noise you once mistook for power, until the simple tone of being you have chosen fills the space and gives matter its cue. You have felt this tone before in flashes that were easy to dismiss because they lacked spectacle. A morning when the air felt newly washed, and the knot in your stomach was gone without negotiation. An hour when work arranged itself around your presence as if your desk had learned to breathe. A conversation that would once have trapped you in defense, yet unfolded like a bridge you had already crossed. Those moments were not accidents. They were measurements. Somewhere just beneath narration, you chose to be a certain way, and the world fell into rhythm with that choice. To repeat them, you do not need a louder ritual. You need a steadier pulse. You need to remember that the universe is exquisitely literal. It reads the whole of you, not the headline you speak. If your spine says unsafe, your calendar will fill with proof. If your breath says enough, scarcity will have nothing left to grip. So how does a human body deliver such precision without pretending? By letting feeling lead the sentence. Practice the command the way a musician practices a note, not by shouting it, but by finding it. Before you say, "I am clear," find where clarity lives in your chest and step into its room. Before you say, "I am loved," let your shoulders descend as if the world has already put down its weapons. Before you say, "I am abundant," inhale as if the air itself were evidence. The declaration that follows will be simple, almost private, and therefore powerful. You will not need to repeat it until exhausted. You will not need to argue with the skeptic in your head. The skeptic is only a guard hired by an old regime. When the new ruler sits in the body's chair, guards retire without ceremony. The palace does not hold a debate. It changes hands and keeps breathing. Expect the field to answer with choreography, not fireworks. It will start small because small is how reality proves it is listening without feeding your addiction to drama. An email arrives with a sentence that removes a week of friction. A stranger offers a kindness before you can wonder if you deserve it. A long-standing delay thaws at exactly the pace your system can handle. Call these coincidences if you need to stay humble. But honor them like breadcrumbs left by an intelligence that enjoys being elegant. Each one is feedback that your state has been measured and that the measurement is sticking. Your task is not to demand a parade. Your task is to keep the instrument in tune long enough for the symphony to admit that you are now the conductor. Doubt will visit, carrying the old contracts you signed under pressure. It will remind you of dates and numbers, of disappointments that taught you to shrink in advance. Do not wrestle it on the floor of your mind. Make it a chair and give it something better to listen to. The steadiness of your breath, the warmth in your hands, the unhurried cadence of a voice that no longer bargains for its own life. Let the body speak first, and the sentence, "I am," will arrive without strain, like a signature you recognize. In this order, feeling before phrasing, you cannot fake yourself out. The field cannot be tricked either, which is why this is liberating. You are free from performance, because the only thing that works is the thing that is true. There is a humility inside this power that makes it safe. You are not bending the world to your will. You are refusing to broadcast noise. You are not bypassing effort. You are removing the friction that made effort look like virtue. When your inner weather clears, action becomes exact. You send fewer messages and receive more meaningful replies. You make fewer moves and end up further along. You say fewer words and land closer to the heart. The outside observer will call it luck. But luck is the name we give to coherence when we have not yet learned to hear it hum. Learn to hear it. Learn to be it. Then watch the veil of solidity keep behaving like a veil, shimmering, rearranging, letting more light through each time you remember who is looking. If you are tempted to ask how long you must practice before the world complies, notice that the question assumes a future where you are still negotiating. The observer's law does not bargain with time. It folds time toward the state that refuses to wait to be itself. Choose your state now in the smallest ways a nervous system can believe. Hold it long enough for the field to take its measurement. Approve the quiet evidence as it arrives. Repeat. This is not a sprint to a finish line. It is a change of gravity. One day you will realize you're no longer holding the state. The state is holding you, and the collapse is happening on its own. By then, I am will feel less like a command and more like a description of the room, of the hour, of the life that appeared when you chose your weather and let the world arrange itself around the clear sky you finally became. There is a turning point in every awakening where you stop asking the universe to notice you and begin noticing that you are the universe noticing itself. Until that moment, you live like a polite patron in a cosmic restaurant, eyes moving across an infinite menu, waiting for someone in a hidden kitchen to decide whether you are worthy of what you crave. You whisper affirmations as if they were timid orders, hoping the waiter writes them down correctly, hoping the chef is in a generous mood, hoping the dish you want is not out of stock. But the architecture of reality is not built for beggars. It is designed for authors. The field does not serve favorites. It serves frequencies. When you realize this, the dining room dissolves and you find yourself on the other side of the swinging door, surrounded by ingredients that answer only to your hands. You were never the customer. You were always the chef. To cook in this kitchen is not to chant recipes into the air. It is to handle substance. Feeling is flour. Breath is heat. Attention is the knife that makes everything precise. You do not scream, "I am abundant," over a cold stove, and then complain that nothing warms. You build a small, steady fire in your nervous system, letting the breath round out the edges of urgency until your body learns what enough actually tastes like. You fold that taste into posture and tone, and only then do the words, "I am," leave your mouth like the final seasoning that reveals the dish was ready all along. This is why incoherent affirmations fall flat. A sentence without scent or temperature cannot feed you. The field reads flavor. It does not take orders from an empty plate. The old identity will try to keep you in the dining room because standing in the kitchen looks like more responsibility than you have energy for. It will point at the mess and the heat and say, "See, this is hard. Better to wait for someone else to cook." But notice the exhaustion you carry from waiting. Notice how heavy it is to spend a life rehearsing hunger. Then notice the paradox. The moment you pick up the ingredients of your own state, the breath, the gaze, the quiet insistence on truth over performance, effort stops feeling like strain and starts feeling like rhythm. You are not fighting for results anymore. You are keeping time with what already wants to be made through you. The pot hums. The room softens. Possibility, which once felt like a taunt from the future, begins to smell like something you could eat right now. Embodiment is the difference between describing a feast and serving one. If you have ever read a menu so lovingly written that you could taste the dish before it arrived, you know the power of language. But even the best words cannot replace temperature on a tongue. In the same way, your mind can sketch the outlines of wealth, connection, or peace until the blueprint feels perfect, and still your day will wobble if your body is not lit from within by the state you drew. So bring the state down out of concept. Let abundance be a breath that does not rush. Let love be the soft weight in your shoulders when you decide to be undefended. Let peace be the way your eyes rest on a room without hunting for what is wrong. This is not pretending. This is proper sequencing. Become the flavor first, speak the name later, and reality will read the alignment without needing proof. There is a humility to being the chef that protects you from arrogance. You discover that "I am" is not an attempt to dominate the dining room. It is a promise to keep your station clean. You choose a state and then you honor it in 100 quiet ways. The way you answer a message without leaking urgency into it. The way you decline an invitation that belongs to an old appetite. The way you pause at the threshold of a difficult conversation and season your words with presence before you cross. None of these gestures will look heroic from the balcony. Yet they are the exact gestures that alter the menu for everyone you touch. When your dish is coherent, you do not need to convince anyone to taste it. Coherence is fragrant. It travels on its own. Skepticism will enter the kitchen and point to an empty plate on the pass. It will say, "If you are the chef, where is the meal?" This is where you remember the physics behind the poetry. The observer collapses the wave into a particle, and the particle appears at the speed your system can sustain without burning. If your body has marinated in scarcity for years, abundance does not arrive as a flood that drowns your nervous system. It arrives as a series of precise deliveries that teach your tissues to hold more without bracing. The skeptic calls that slowness. The field calls it calibration. Your job is not to shout for louder proof. Your job is to keep the flame steady so the reduction can thicken into something undeniable. If you have ever rushed a sauce and ruined it, you understand the mercy of timing. There will be days when smoke rises and you think you are failing. Look closer. Some smoke is the smell of the old recipe burning off the pan so the new one can take. The impulse will be to fling open a window and complain that the kitchen is too intense. Instead, lower the heat a notch, scrape gently, and stay. Mastery grows in the willingness to remain intimate with the process when appearances are unflattering. The universe is not grading you on presentation while you learn to plate a new life. It is listening to whether your hands shake less today than they did yesterday when you say, "I am," and mean it with your spine. You will know the transition from seeker to chef is complete when you stop asking for signs and start noticing that everything is a sign. The light on the counter at the exact moment you exhale. The way your timing with a friend feels choreographed even when plans changed 3 times. The email that arrives with the sentence you needed, not because you begged the sky, but because your field finally stopped arguing with itself long enough to be readable. These are not party tricks. They are diagnostics. They tell you your flavor is consistent, your command is clear, your kitchen is in rhythm. From here, action becomes a pleasure because it is no longer an attempt to wrestle outcomes into place. It is the natural movement of a body that already knows dinner is served. Stand here with flour on your hands and say the words the way chefs say "ready" in a language only kitchens need. Say them softly and let the room hear the truth in them. I am. Then keep cooking, at the edge of sleep. When your name has not yet fastened itself to your chest and yesterday's noise has not yet reclaimed the room, there is a hush that belongs only to you. It is the softest doorway in existence. The thin seam where potential waits without pressure and the body has not chosen its costume for the day. That is where creation begins. Not at the office, not in the inbox, not in the mirror, but in that tender interval when your breath is still wide and the world has not told you how to feel. If you want the statement, "I am," to land like a law and not a wish, you must step into that seam before anything else reaches you. Do not negotiate with it. Do not explain it. Meet it the way the ocean meets shore, continually, quietly, and with enough certainty that even stone reshapes itself to your rhythm. Lying there, let your attention gather like warm light behind your sternum. Do nothing clever. Let the weight of your body teach you that you are already held. The nervous system listens to posture more than it listens to sentences, and it believes whatever your breath rehearses most. So widen the breath by a single measure, not to perform calm, but to invite it. Feel the exhale lengthen as if time itself wanted a little more room to work. When the mind tries to rush ahead and assign tasks, bring it back to sensation, the simple heaviness of the sheets, the quiet temperature of the air, the pulse in your wrists that has served you all these years without applause. This is not an escape from life. It is the exact point where life accepts your instructions. From within that grounded warmth, let the feeling of your chosen state arrive without decoration. Do not chase pictures. Let the body decide the texture. Abundance rarely looks like numbers at first. It feels like unhurried space inside your chest. Love does not begin with faces. It starts as a gentle willingness to stay open when you could close. Peace is not the absence of noise. It is the steady weight of a mountain beneath your ribs. Allow one of these flavors to fill you until the edges of worry cannot find a place to attach. The field reads flavor before it reads words, and when the flavor is coherent, the words "I am" become a seal rather than a plea. Speak them inwardly, the way a musician touches the final note and knows the room has understood. There is no strain in it, no bargaining. Only the quiet authority of someone who has tasted what they are naming. You will be tempted to sprint into the day the instant you feel that click, as if the state might evaporate if you do not protect it with effort. Resist the sprint. Let stillness linger long enough to teach your cells that this is not a fragile visit, but a homecoming. The body does not change by argument. It changes by repetition of relief. If you gift it 60 more seconds of unforced presence, it will spend the next hours trying to return to this reference point, like a compass that remembers true north even after a jolt. This is why the morning command matters more than any to-do list. Lists manage tasks. Commands organize reality. When you finally rise, carry the state in your bones rather than balancing it in your mind. Walk as if your feet were learning a new alphabet that spells out ease. Let your hands move a fraction slower than anxiety prefers, not to drag time, but to inform it. When you speak, give your voice the weight of the mountain you felt a moment ago. People will hear the difference, even if they cannot describe it. Coherence always sounds like permission. Without announcing anything, you will notice doors behaving differently. Emails phrased with more care, conversations that would normally snag sliding past without bruise, timings that arrive as if a hidden choreographer touched your shoulder. Nothing magical has been added. Interference has been removed. Of course, the old frequency will try to audition for the lead again. It will throw you the familiar hook of worry just as you open your messages, or tighten your throat right before a call that used to make you small. This is not failure. It is gravitational memory. In that moment, return to the one gesture you can carry everywhere. Place a palm on your chest, the way you did upon waking, and let the breath widen by a single count. You are not repeating a ritual. You are reminding matter which score to play. The body learns much like a choir does, through patient, consistent pitch. If you hold the note, the room finds you. Do not argue with the mirror of the world while the new command is still cooling. The account balance, the unresolved thread, the person who does not yet understand. They are yesterday's photograph catching up to a live broadcast. Treat them as artifacts rather than evidence. An artifact tells you where you have been. It does not tell you who you must be. Handle what requires handling with the tone of the state you named at dawn. If abundance is the flavor, pay the bill like someone who trusts circulation more than hoarding. If love is your selection, answer the message without the armor you used to wear. If peace is the dish, decline the conversation that feeds only adrenaline and call it devotion rather than avoidance. In every case, action stops being a test and becomes a demonstration. You are not trying to convince the field. You are letting it read you clearly. Midday, when the engine of the world is loudest, you will forget. That is not a problem. It is a design. Forgetting is the space that makes remembering valuable. Choose a tiny portal back, one scent, one phrase, one touch, and use it without ceremony. You are not summoning a miracle. You are slipping your hand into your own coat pocket where you left the key this morning. The state will return faster each time because the nervous system respects consistency more than intensity. Grand, dramatic practices impress the mind for a weekend. Small, faithful gestures retrain biology for a lifetime. Evening leans in and fatigue loosens your edges. Do not grade your day with a red pen. Review it the way a compassionate artisan inspects a first run from a new mold. Where did the form hold? Where did it wobble? Where did you revert, and what rhythm would steady that section tomorrow? You are not looking for fault. You are looking for friction points so you can sand them with kindness. The kitchen keeps learning, and the menu evolves without shame. Before you sleep, return to the simple warmth behind the sternum and let the morning's flavor re-enter, not as a task, but as a lullaby. The brain will carry it into dreams, and the dreams will carry it back to the seam at dawn. This is how a single sentence becomes a climate. This is how I am shifts from a phrase you say when you feel brave to the baseline hum that holds you when you are tired. It is not built by willpower's clenched jaw. It is built by the slow honesty of breath, posture, and tone, repeated until the universe recognizes your signal, without static. When the day ends, notice the quiet changes, the absence of reactivity where it used to flare, the lightness in rooms that once weighed more than they should, the way coincidence begins to behave like a colleague. These subtleties are the early harvest of a different morning. They are proof that a life reorganizes most when no one is watching. Tomorrow we'll ask again. Answer it the same way, with a seam of silence, with a body that remembers, with a command that does not shout. Then move into action as if the world were already listening. Because it is. There is a moment, sometimes small enough to slip past unnoticed, when the world presents you with yesterday's photograph and asks you to swear it is live news. The invoice arrives. The silence from someone you love lingers. A plan that felt guided suddenly hesitates. Reflex wants to slam its palm on the table and declare, nothing changed. This is the hinge upon which timelines swing, not because the number on a screen or the pause in a conversation has any moral power, but because your interpretation either recycles the past or consecrates the new. The lens through which you read reality is not commentary, it is creation. If the morning command selects the dish, the reframing lens is how you continue to cook when the kitchen fills with smoke from the old recipe burning off. Begin by treating everything you meet as feedback rather than fate. Feedback is intimate. It tells you exactly where your signal is clear and where it wavers. Fate is distant. It convinces you that meaning is decided elsewhere. When a familiar tension tries to recruit you, an unexpected bill, a delayed reply, a door that does not open on your schedule. Notice how quickly the old narrator reaches for a verdict. It says, "See, you were naive." It says, "People never change." It says, "This is who you are." Let the voice speak without lending it your oath. The universe is not delivering a sentence. It is asking a question. Will you answer as the person you were, or reply as the presence you chose at dawn? To reframe correctly, draw the experience back into the living room of your body before you define it with your mind. Feel the first contraction where it actually happens. Perhaps the sternum hardens, perhaps the throat narrows, perhaps the face warms. Do not diagnose yourself. Breathe exactly where the body is folding and widen the breath by a single count, the way you did when you sealed "I am." As sensation softens, you are no longer reacting from the fossil of yesterday. You are re-entering the broadcast booth. From here, ask the only question that matters. If my morning command were a person walking this moment, how would they move? What tone would they use? Which boundary or generosity would they choose? This is not pretending. It is the simplest form of coherence, behaving in alignment with the signal you already sent. Reality respects that alignment immediately, though not always with theatrics. Sometimes it answers with a subtle easing, a conversation that stays warm where it once would have sparked, a solution that appears in an ordinary sentence, the way a key hides in plain sight on the table you kept searching under. Other times it answers by stripping away what cannot travel with you. A client passes. A friendship loosens. The calendar clears without your consent. If you judge those changes by the comfort of your habits, you will call them loss. If you judge them by the precision of resonance, you will call them proof. The field cannot build a cathedral on scaffolding that was meant for a shed. It will clear the site first. The reframing lens names that clearing as construction, not catastrophe. There is a discipline here, but it is gentler than the one you were taught. It does not demand forced optimism or painted smiles. It asks for quiet authorship. When the old evidence appears, you narrate from the new identity. You do not say, "This bill proves I am not abundant." You say, "This is the last reflection of a smaller signal, and I will answer it like the river answers stone, by staying in motion." You do not say, Their silence means I am not loved. You say, my love is not a vote they must cast. It is a frequency I carry, and I will keep my heart available without abandoning my boundary. You do not say, the delay means the door is closed. You say, timing is intelligence. What is mine moves to meet me when I can hold it without fracture. In each case, the story bends in your hands, not because you are ignoring facts, but because you are interpreting them with the same frequency that will eventually surround you in form. Practice makes this natural. Not the brittle practice of arguing with reality, but the steady practice of asking better questions. The worst questions are small traps. Why is this happening to me? What did I do wrong? When will it end? They tighten the chest and seek a culprit. The best questions widen the room. What is this moment inviting me to embody? Which part of me is ready to retire an old reflex? How can I respond in a way my future self would recognize as home? Notice how your breath changes as you ask. The body tells you when a question opens a door. Ask it again. Let it lead you to one small, honorable action. One email composed with dignity rather than rush. One boundary spoken without apology. 1 hour of focused work done in the tone of sufficiency rather than panic. The field reads those micro-signals like coordinates. You will encounter mirrors who prefer the old you. Their gravity will pull at the exact places where your signal is still learning its shape. Do not fight them and do not convert them. Bless them as tutors who helped you discover your edge and choose not to step back over it. Reframing here sounds like simple clarity. That version of me is finished. It does not require a speech. Your consistency will communicate what your explanations never could. Over time, the invitations that used to trap you will stop arriving. Not because the world became kinder, but because you stopped broadcasting the frequency that summoned them. This is the mathematics of resonance working in your favor. On days when the noise is loud and the lens fogs, shorten the distance between trigger and truth. Place your palm on your chest the way you did in the morning and whisper the state you chose. I am peace, or I am love, or I am abundance. Not to win an argument with the world, but to remind the instrument which note it is tuned to. Then take the next step that a peaceful, loving, abundant person would take in the exact situation in front of you. If the next step is rest, let it be rest without guilt. If the next step is risk, let it be risk without theatrics. If the next step is silence, let it be silence without passive aggression. Coherence is not loud, it is consistent. Consistency is what turns a sentence into climate. At night, when you review the day, look for small proofs. The email that arrived with unexpected grace. The tension that would have owned you and did not. The impulse you did not indulge. The reframing lens sharpens with gratitude, not as a performance, but as accurate noticing. Each observation is a stitch. Together, they bind the morning command to the fabric of your hours so tightly that even surprise cannot tear them apart. What begins as a practice becomes a posture. What begins as a posture becomes a presence. And what begins as a presence becomes the quiet architecture of a life that no longer argues with mirrors because it remembers it is the light. This is how old evidence loses its jurisdiction. This is how you stop giving yesterday the microphone. The world will still present its tests, but they will start to feel like opportunities to demonstrate fluency rather than traps designed to expose fraud. You will watch yourself answer with a steadiness that seems borrowed from someone wiser. And then you will realize it is not borrowed at all. It is simply the morning's certainty extended through the afternoon and set down gently in the evening. The way a river extends a mountain snow into fields you cannot see from the summit. Keep the lens clean. Keep the breath honest. Keep the question generous. Do this, and the outer picture will have no choice but to sharpen to match the inner frame you refuse to surrender. There is a moment after the final note of a symphony when the hall holds its breath. No one moves. The air itself seems to listen for the echo returning from the far walls. That is where you stand now, not at an ending, but in the stillness where power gathers before it pours into form. You have followed the arc from theory to embodiment, from the distant language of particles to the intimate grammar of breath, from ordering off the cosmic menu to discovering you were the kitchen all along. And here, at the edge of silence, the truth becomes simplest. Creation is not an argument you win with reality. It is a tone you hold until the world harmonizes. What does a life look like when the phrase, "I am," is no longer a wish, but a seal? It looks less like fireworks and more like clarity. It sounds less like declarations and more like a heart that has settled into its natural rhythm. You wake before the noise and choose your frequency the way a maestro tunes a single string until every instrument agrees. You touch the sensory anchor you have claimed for yourself, not as a crutch, but as a signature, a subtle reminder that your field is not a byproduct of circumstance. It is the source. Your mind will offer old stories because minds love the familiar, but your body, trained to recognize the feeling of truth, will answer with steadiness. And as that steadiness accumulates, time rearranges itself to favor you. You have seen how easily the intellect can collect ideas while the nervous system clings to yesterday. That is why this path has insisted on feeling over performance, on a breath that lengthens before a sentence does, on posture that announces safety before language attempts to convince. Knowledge opened the door. Embodiment walked you through it. You do not need to force the hinge. The door remembers how to swing because you designed it that way when you first learned to say, "I am," without apology, when evidence lags. And sometimes it will, not as punishment, but as pacing. Remember that the world outside is a photograph developed from old light. The new exposure has already been taken. Your only task is to keep the lens clean and the aperture open. Think of those uncanny alignments you once dismissed as coincidence. The message that arrived at the exact hour your certainty returned. The green lights that arranged themselves after a single exhale. The friend whose voice appeared precisely when you allowed softness to lead. These were not souvenirs from a lucky day. They were previews of a baseline. The more consistently you inhabit coherence, the less dramatic it feels, and the more inevitable. The field prefers precision to spectacle. It is not impressed by volume, it is moved by purity. So you will find yourself speaking less and saying more, acting less and accomplishing more, wanting less and receiving more. Not through austerity, but through the absence of friction. That is what it means to live with your hands on the controls of the kitchen you once imagined was elsewhere. But let us go deeper than results. Because the God state you have touched is not a machine for manufacturing outcomes. It is the recognition that all outcomes are tributaries of a single river: being. From being comes word, and from word comes world. I am is not a spell that makes reality obey. It is the sentence by which reality knows your name. When you speak it from coherence, the universe does not negotiate. It recognizes kin. The distance between prayer and response collapses, not because you have learned to manipulate the mechanism, but because you have stopped interrupting it. You are not a beggar at the gates of cause. You are the gate through which cause becomes form. There will be days when echoes return, the old invitation to argue for your limits, the familiar ache that tries to convince you a previous chapter demands a sequel. Meet them the way a lighthouse meets a storm, by remaining what you are. The beam does not wrestle with the waves. It keeps shining until ships remember their bearings. Your boundary is not hardness. It is clarity. Your compassion is not collapse. It is presence. What once drained you will pass through you because there is nothing for it to cling to in a field that no longer confuses attention with obligation. The echo fades because you no longer feed it with identification. The lesson completes not when the world changes its tone, but when you cease to harmonize with noise. You have learned the difference between attraction and selection. Attraction implies distance and doubt. Selection presumes belonging. When you declare "I am," you are not dragging a future toward a reluctant present. You are allowing a present to reveal the future it already contains. The morning command is how you remember. The reframing lens is how you remain. The sensory anchor is how you return when the day tries to borrow your certainty. These are not rituals of superstition. They are the ergonomics of consciousness, the simple, elegant movements by which you keep the instrument in tune. If you look around and notice that rooms grow quieter when you enter, that conversations tilt toward honesty, that timing becomes more musical, it is not because the world has learned to flatter you. It is because your field has become usable to the intelligence that coordinates everything. Coherence is a service. It stabilizes more than your calendar. It steadies the portion of the collective you touch. You will not need to announce this. Authentic power advertises itself by relieving tension wherever it goes. Your presence becomes a permission slip. Your certainty becomes a map others can read without you handing it to them. Do not confuse gentleness with passivity. The river carves canyons not by shouting at stone, but by being endlessly itself. That is the posture of the God state. Not dominance, not retreat, but unhurried inevitability. You do not chase alignment. You keep choosing it. You do not perform faith. You breathe it. You do not hoard proof. You emanate it. And when old measurements try to take you back to old rooms, you will smile, not from arrogance, but from recognition, and let the tape fall to the floor. The architecture has changed. The ceiling is higher now. The doors open wider. The windows face a truer light. What remains, then, is a vow you make in silence. To speak I am, only from a state that can carry the weight of the world it summons. To refrain from declaring lack dressed as aspiration. To choose the sentence only when your breath agrees. It is a gentle vow, not a threat. And because it is gentle, it will hold. Let it lead you in the smallest places. At the sink while the water warms. In the doorway before you answer. In the pause at the top of the stair. Mastery happens there, where no one applauds and everything rearranges. So when you rise tomorrow, let the room be quiet long enough for you to hear the hum behind your name. Touch what you have chosen. Feel the texture of abundance, the temperature of peace, the gravity of love. And then seal it, not with volume, not with repetition, but with the sovereign softness of a truth that does not need to convince. I am. 2 words, and the kitchen begins. If you ever wonder whether it is working, notice how your posture tells the story before your mouth does. Notice how decisions arrive as recognition rather than debate. Notice how gratitude appears without an object, as if the air itself were proof. These are the signatures of alignment. These are the quiet confirmations that the wave has collapsed, that the particle has appeared, that the unseen has remembered your coordinates and answered as it always does. Exactly. You are not leaving with instructions. You are leaving with identification. You are not a student of the field. You are the field learning to speak in the language of a human day. Keep your tone clean. Keep your breath honest. Keep your hands steady on the instrument. And when the moment calls for it, as it will, again and again, let the seal be simple and complete. The smallest sentence with the largest horizon. I am.